Hello. Today I want to talk to you about support. So most stock transfer cases like the NP231, the 242, the 249, etc., they just are supported by the transmission. They hang off the back and are supported by the 6 bolts from the transmission, and then they just hang there. But I've recently installed an Atlas transfer case. It's a gear-driven transfer case. It has no chain, but it's about twice as heavy as the 231. With that being said, it needs some support. There's a lot of weight hanging off the back of that transmission. Plus, usually when you install an aftermarket transfer case like an Atlas, you're pushing bigger tires. I want to support it before it cracks the transmission. Now there's several different ways to secure an Atlas, but I would say the most popular is to support the tail housing. Now TMR Customs makes a kit for this. So this piece right here goes around the rear tail housing of the Atlas, and it tightens down on it. It's left long for a reason, so that you can cut it to length. Then you've got this tube here, and you've got some bushings in it, and then there's another piece that connects onto whatever you want. You can connect that to your skid plate, or you can connect that to another tube, anything solid. And it ends up looking like this. Now the reason you want to have bushings in here is because you can't solid mount the transfer case, because the transfer case, the transmission, and the engine all need to move as one. They need to be able to move together. So these bushings allow for that. Now let's see about getting it installed. Now as you can see in my case, clearances are very, very tight. But the first thing I want to do is put this top clamp piece on. Now the nice thing about this TMR piece is that it's machined. It's not just plasma torched out, so it's a very, very good fit. Another nice thing about this one is that you can put it on without removing your drive shaft. I've got to get that bushing in here, and you can see that I'm going to need to cut it down quite a bit. So I'm going to take this back out and cut it. I'll probably end up cutting these off too, and I'm going to mount this to my skid plate. Now, the bad thing about mounting to your skid plate, it's not ideal, because if you bend the skid plate, it's going to break something, because this is mounted to the skid plate. If the skid plate bends up, it's going to push everything up. It's not ideal, but I don't have enough room to run another tube in here. As you can see, I've got too much stuff in the way and it's too cluttered. So, but my skid plate is over 1 inch thick, so I think it's going to be okay. But ideally you would want to run another tube that is not part of your skid plate, so that if your skid plate did bend, then it wouldn't push this stuff up. And you can do it from the bottom, or you could also turn everything upside down if you had the room, and mount it from the top or the side. Okay, as you can see, I had to put it on a slight angle because of this nut over here was too close to the exhaust. Now, once you get it like this, it's pretty simple. We're just going to tack it up, take it back out, and weld it up. Problem for me is, this is painted, and I've got to get that paint off, and kind of tight clearance, so I got to figure out how to get that paint off so I can tack it up, but then we'll be on our way. Alright, I'm ready to tack it up. Now the most important thing is that you've got everything tight. I've got this tight. I installed some spacers here and I tightened this bolt down. My skid plate is tight and it's where it needs to be. My Atlas is where it's going to sit. So everything needs to be good and snug before you tack this down, otherwise it's going to be out of place. So I need to tack this piece to this tube, and then I need to tack the brackets down here. Then I'll take everything off and finish welding it. Now I can't even see where I need to weld there, so it's going to be tricky. Let's try it. Okay, now I should be able to take this bolt out. I'll be able to take this piece out and weld it, and then I'll need to drop the skid plate to weld the tabs on. Ugh. Okay, so when you weld these tabs, you don't want them to bend in or out. You don't want to weld with the bushings in there, so I've cut a piece of scrap metal, and I'm just going to put it in there while I weld it. That way it won't move. Alternatively, what you could do, if you didn't want to do this, is to weld it on the outside first. That way if it's going to move, it'll bend outward instead of inward. Outward is better, a little better than inward anyway, because if you get it to bend inward, if you were to weld it on inside first, then you wouldn't be able to get your bushing in there. And on this guy, of course, you'll want to take the bushings out before you weld it. Alright, paint should be dry now. I'm going to put the bushings back in. I like to grease them first. Here's a little trick for your jar of grease here, is to cut a hole in the top and put you a little paintbrush in there. That way you don't have to get your hands dirty every time. Now I think the easiest way to install it will probably be to put it in here first and then just lift it up into place. I'll leave this loose, take the top off of it. Alright guys, now if we did it right, it should fit perfectly on the Atlas, and it does. So the next thing we need to do is just take this piece, and it's got a little X marked in it, so you know it was machined that way. You line the two X's up together, and we're just going to put this, oh, I can't hold the camera and do this at the same time, but we're just going to put this on the top and bolt it down. Then we're going to make sure this bolt is tight, and we'll be good to go. It'll be fully supported. Okay, well, if you have any questions or comments, you can leave those below. And you can find that support at tmrcustoms.com. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.